Good morning. We begin the plenary session. My name is Natalia Trunova. I'm a Vice President of the Center for Strategic Research. Today, we are going to talk about spatial development. We'll talk about the new quality of life. We have a number of panelists. They don't really need much introduction. When I pose questions, I am going to address them and I will identify their titles, but I think that you know what they are. This is the third day of the Gaidar Forum, and we have a full house. That is a demonstration of the high interest that people have for this subject. Spatial development is not a new subject. You know that in 2017, 2018, much work was done to develop this concept. We have Vadim Zhivulin, Deputy Minister of the Economy. He will tell us about the state of things in this concept. We will also look at what people do in Europe, in Southeast Asia. We see that there are some key trends that are pretty much popular everywhere. We see a lot of urban development. There is a lot of potential there, and there are some threats associated with this line of development. Countries with low and high levels of urbanization are trying to build new policies regarding development of cities and towns. So today we are going to mostly focus on urban development. There are four main items that we want to address. What is the role that cities will play in spatial development? What we can do to make the development more effective? Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Mikhailov. He will give his speech on the role of cities in our development program. Thank you very much, Natalia. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of interest that we see to the subject of spatial development. It is great that we are having this discussion today. We see that there are very many aspects that we can address. We should be talking not only about development of cities, social establishments, various public organizations. We certainly cannot talk about everything, but there are many more things that are worth talking about. I would like to start by giving you a few pictures. If I may, let us look at several PowerPoint charts that I have here. This is the map. It shows migration patterns in the country over the period of several years. You can see that people are moving around between regions. If you look at the city level, you see that the situation is different in different parts of the country. The reasons for those differences are quite many. We have studied this situation and we arrived at a number of conclusions. We see that people gravitate towards economic growth centers. There are about 20 of them in Russia. One conclusion we can make is that We should have more centers of gravity, more growth centers, places that people would want to go to. How does this relate to development of cities? Most of those centers are located in big cities. Cities are good because they offer a lot of opportunities for people. People can do more. People can enjoy higher living standards. Cities are attracting people not only in Russia. That is also true for many other parts of the world. Many countries encourage that because it helps to achieve higher level of economic development. We have looked at value creation per capita in different cities. We have looked at the major cities in Russia, and we see that the added value per capita in our major cities is not as high as major international cities. The numbers are quite a bit lower. In global competition, we do not rate very high. The concentration in cities is a phenomenon that you see pretty much everywhere in the world. Let us take a look at a big modern city of today. This is a chart that shows you an example of a process that has been happening for a number of years. You can see the map of Moscow region, and another part of this chart shows you the area around Nizhny Novgorod. Whatever we do, there are more and more people settling around big capital cities. We have to address a number of challenges associated with urban development. What we need to do to develop infrastructure so that people can have decent lives in big cities. What kind of standards we should introduce to make people comfortable? Today, many people are looking for higher level of comfort. The standards that we have been accustomed to in the industrial era are no longer relevant. There are many new things that have to be added today. We also pay quite a bit of attention to development of rural areas. There's a lot of development work that has to be done in villages. However, cities remain in the focal point of our attention. I can give you a few interesting numbers. OECD experts believe that by 2020 we will see a doubling of urban population throughout the world, and that will be the biggest change in the 21st century. Cities will play a bigger role in the world economic development. Cities will make the biggest contribution to economic development. Cities will accommodate more businesses, and we are going to see emergence of agglomerations of cities. That is what is happening in many parts of the world, and many governments are paying special attention to development of new policies for this kind of development. A high percentage of national population will live in urban areas. China sees that a lot. We certainly ask ourselves the question what we have to do to develop our cities, what kind of priorities we should set for ourselves for years to come, what we should do to give people quality social services, what we should do to develop various types of infrastructure in cities. We want to eliminate various barriers that people are facing today when they live in cities. We are comparing cities in Russia to cities in other parts of the world. We look at various ratings. We see that only Moscow and St. Petersburg are rated by various international organizations. Other cities, even bigger cities in Russia, are not reviewed by rating organizations. That is sad because we are paying so much attention to urban development. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mikhailov. We're talking about the potential of economic development in cities. What does it take to open up the city's potential? We're saying that we need to have a well-balanced development program for urban areas. Any city is a very complex structure. There are so many things intertwined within any city. Look at the transportation systems, look at the environment, utilities, infrastructure. There are very many different aspects of urban development, and we have to look at them holistically. We are not always able to do that successfully. We have to have comprehensive development plans. Many cities have general strategic development plans that cover very many different things. Thank you. We have the Minister of Transport of Russian Federation, Mr. Dietrich, with us at this panel today. We understand the importance of infrastructure for economic development. We have seen a serious progress in development of infrastructure just before the World Cup of 2018. Many airports were built. A lot was done to improve the rail system. We remember what airports were like 15 years ago. Today, they look completely different. Look at some popular KPIs like angle coefficient. We see that it is lower in Russia than in many other parts of the world. What kind of plans do you have to improve infrastructure? How that is going to impact the living standards and how that is going to impact the national economy in general? We see that cities are getting bigger and various territories become much more connected. So what is going to happen? Please share your thoughts. Well, this is a million-dollar question. I will try to address at least some parts of it. The Ministry of Economic Development is looking at the potential that we have to accelerate our development. We are looking specifically at the transportation systems. They are very important because they provide connectivity for the country. We also have a very high social responsibility. We look at various growth centers. We have identified 10, 20, 30 urban agglomerations. They are certainly the leaders in economic development. Russia is one of the biggest countries, and we have to remember about people who live way out there, far away from the growth centers. Those people, too, must have access to infrastructure, and they should have available transportation. That is a very important function of our ministry. In 2017, the Ministry of Transport launched a project to improve the quality and safety on Russian roads. We learned quite a lot. There were 38 cities and urban agglomerations that were included in this project. Some cities were capital cities, others were smaller. We have seen different performance in different areas. In 2016, the quality of road network was leaving quite a lot to be desired. People had a lot of issues, and they complained a lot. Over 2 years, in 2017 and in 2018, we have changed quite a lot. We have looked at people's complaints in different cities. We have received a lot of feedback at different levels, and we understood what transport infrastructure caused problems. We realized where people needed much higher quality transportation services. A couple of points. Those cities that were more active in this program, the cities that were listening to their residents, those that were paying more attention to improving their roads, have been getting much more support. The next step for those participants, for those cities, was switching to the new quality. We're no longer just fixing the roads and improving infrastructure to an acceptable level. We're now looking at the prospects for infrastructure development. We see what can be done to improve public transportation, where we need to build more parking areas, what we can do to improve traffic in different parts of cities, what we can do to better manage transport flows in cities. We are improving motorways. We include additional regions into the project. There will be 104 cities and city agglomerations. All the central cities, that have more than 200,000 residents, they will be participating. We are looking for those cities to develop comprehensive programs for improvement of the transportation system.
I'm talking about development of roads, of public transport system, new rolling stock. The program suggests a number of measures to support the infrastructural development and to receive this support, from the population as well. The authorities should show that they are ready and able to actively start developing and implementing these projects. And of course, talking about transport, talking about spatial transformation, I should also say that agglomerations should be linked not just with each other, but with other dwellings and residential areas where people live. And here we have to, first of all, make people more mobile. And I can tell you that people, they can and they will and they want to move if compared to last year. The aviation transport carried 12% more passengers this winter holidays than last year. Public transport carried 4.5% people more during these long winter holidays in Russia than last year. It means that people are willing to travel, willing to move around. At the same time, our second plan is to develop infrastructure, regional aviation, other different types of transport. At the same time, we have an all-round program of linking regions to each other. We also develop marine transport and alluvial transport. And it's not just the social function of transport that is meant to improve the quality of life, improve social development, but we are also talking about transportation of fuel and materials and other commodities that make part of well-being. If it's 8 to 14% of carrying such cargoes in different types of transport, and considering the size of our country, considering the length of our transport routes, if we manage to debottleneck some places, we will not only be able to reduce the cost of products, but we will increase the quality of service, and this will also be beneficial to the population as well. So we are looking at this from the points of view of territorial link between the regions, and in this respect, spatial transformation is one of keys to success. The ministry approved at the end of September last year a special plan which is built on the fundamentals of the strategy of spatial transformation. And we agreed that when the strategy is finally fully developed, we will see how to link all the growth points in order to improve the social development in all regions. Thank you. And the key topic you brought up was public transport. Moscow made a real breakthrough in public transport, and everyone, both the Muscovites and guests who are coming to Moscow and those who moved to Moscow, they really feel the difference. I, for instance, moved from St. Petersburg to Moscow. I also feel the difference. You are talking about agglomerations. In how many of these agglomerations you are talking about, the quality of public transport would be at least a little bit comparable to what we see in Moscow? For instance, when I arrived in a city in Russia, at the airport, I took public transport to get to the city, and you know, it was a very special impression. I still remember this journey from the airport to the city. So my question is, when is everyone in this country going to be proud of our public transport? Well, talking about being proud, all 104 agglomerations, let me tell you, will be proud of the public transport. At least we will do all we can to ensure it. Of course, it will depend on both the administration's effort and on the activity and will of the population to support the administration. Talking about the agglomerations which already started implementing this project of safe roads, we see that some agglomerations, they just made a formal letter to the Ministry of Transport just to have them let them alone. So this is just on paper, and there are those who are already working on it in real life. And in this system, we see that there will be a link between the city buses, which are the main transport in many cities, trams, trolley buses, trains, and they say that the spatial transformation will be based on ensuring more comfortable environment for moving around. And in the framework of implementation of the national project, they are also going to develop a similar plan, and then we'll discuss them. In our plans and projects, we envisaged support to replace the rolling stock, replace the buses in the cities participating in the project. So we have two principles of co-participation, both financial and real. And this is a very important key to success. You know that we have a program for renovation of city yards and territories around apartment buildings. We know when municipalities attracted the citizens to this work. And, you know, we always see that as soon as the population gets really involved or is invited to participate in making their territory more beautiful, when people understand that this is their money, their taxes that are being invested in infrastructure, in the transformation of the territories around their buildings, they really feel involved and they support the authorities in implementing these projects. Our support, both scientific, creative, and whatever, is always there. Our principle is to show a template how this could look like, and if no one suggests any other creative ideas, while we know that some municipalities do have the money to develop something on their own, there are those who do not, and they could use the templates and our suggestions and models. If you take St. Petersburg, Kazan, Tyumen, Yekaterinburg, these are the regions in which they have their own creative ideas, so let's not restrict them from being creative. They have the resources, they have brilliant ideas, let them implement them. In a number of cities and regions, since I move around the country, I can tell you the business connected with public transport since the times of market economy, it works differently. Somewhere this business is focused on social services, while in other towns they say that they are trying to be reasonable. For instance, they unify several routes, public transport routes, which do not yield any income. At the same time, they have other routes that can be unified and generate some revenues to the operators. And this is about collaboration in the framework of these systems. If the authorities understand what's going on and what they have to do to combat, for instance, illegal transport services like minibuses and minivans, if they are ready to legalize the legal ones and displace the illegal ones, which are also unsafe, then everything becomes as it should be. And the cities I mentioned, they can be taken as role models for the others of how this could be done. We already started doing this, and it is a question of sharing information of how these systems could be built. The ones who have already built them, who have started building them, they should share their experience, best practices, share the problems they encountered at every stage of implementation, so that this could be a good example for those who are yet thinking of joining the club. Thank you so much for a very detailed response. In his speech, Vadim said that it is very important that in the global city maps, we also have at least a couple of Russian cities. And yesterday, for instance, we discussed the development of science and technical potential in our country, because we see more and more examples are taken from science, higher education, whatever. Today we have Deputy Minister of Science and Higher Education, Mr. Medvedev, and I would like to ask you, what should we do? And what can we do? What we lack now and we need in order to increase the export potential of our education, and how we could optimize the outcome of the education program. Good morning. Thank you for your question. Universities, like everyone knows already, are the drivers of development of whole territories. Of course, it's evident that universities compete with each other. They compete for the most unique resource, which is people. Yes, they do have certain ratings, and you know their competition between them, but competing for the human capital, they are competing for the ones who are transforming the territories. And if you look at the latest data for the North America and Europe, the process which is called gentrification, it doesn't really matter how in different places it is done. But we know which creative classes and creative groups of population contribute most to the development of the country, of the economy, no matter what type of gentrification we are talking about, but it really contributes to the development, and we really see this trend as a global one, which we also have in Russia or Moscow, for instance. It's very evident. And therefore, the ministry, in the framework of implementation of the national project, and you know that one of the major tasks we need to implement is to form not less than 15 science and education centers in our country, centers of top level, and talking about spatial transformation, spatial development based on the science and technical development. We need to promote this idea. And that is a big goal for us. We think that sub-agglomerations should be designed, and therefore it is the Russian constituents, Russian regions who are supposed to be most interested in these projects to be implemented. So a lot depends on this work on the regions, not on the federal government. We are currently collaborating with the governors in the framework of this idea, the governors who are interested in changes. We have a number of possible tools to support the territories. Of course, the territories should need a physical boundary, which makes sense, and it would also make sense to apply special jurisdictions, special legal rules there in these territories, and it is quite evident that this territory would be designed first of all at the universities having 3.0 technology, and they definitely should have a strong cooperation with reputable research centers. And in these territories, there should be some anchor research projects being implemented. Such projects could be, for instance, mega science software launch, center of competences, or maybe digitalization programs. And talking about designing of science and education centers, we need to see how to develop the infrastructure, such as science parks, research parks, plus also technology parks. And of course, this should be implemented by the constituents, involving other cities, definitely. And these projects should also provide for renovation of the urban environment. And this is not only about formation of campuses and so on, but it's about development of the whole territory around them. And I think, it seems to me, that this idea was heard and is ready to be supported by the others. And we need special support for SMEs, and it would be good if we could implement in such territories such projects. We need to be careful. We need to select carefully the territories where this would produce a tangible effect, because we need to get down to earth and be realistic. And in this respect, it is the governor's task to select some very meaningful, very popular projects. And you just need to make an inquiry for the investigational agenda prepared by organizations. That's why, once again, in the structure of national program science, it is the science and education centers that are one of the key elements of the puzzle. It's like in Russian dolls. There is a whole number of things that should be present and done in order to form territories of development, territories that would become drivers, attracting people from all around. Thank you. And my question goes again about these centers, 15 agglomerations. I know it's too early to ask you to give us the names of all of them, but we have Alexey Leonidovich, who is the curator of a national project for SMEs. Is there any connection between these projects? We know that in the regions where education system is strong, where there is a very high research potential, in these regions, SMEs have a very special development pattern. They very often create innovative companies and enterprises, and they really do have a certain support. And my second question is about the urban environment. We had a small study Not long ago, we polled students studying in different cities, cities having more than 1 million citizens or less, and more than 60% of students, they are planning to stay in the city they went to the university. And what do we have to do to bring people come to these regions? We need to invest more in education, and we can only hope that some part of them will survive, because we really do want to keep the students in our cities. Thank you. Talking about implementation of a project related to export of our education, we should talk about one key thing. We need to ensure possibilities of personal growth, of skills improvement and development to the young people in Russia and also in other countries as well. I think that this competition is the keys to success. And the one who will win in this competition will be the one who will shape our future to a big extent. That's why, of course, the cities are the platforms where people could get educated, and they could also start their career, build their life, have social and cultural communication. They like to, but creating the system, it means we need to have a multidisciplinary team to work on this. Where should be the science and education centers? That is your question. Well, we saw a number of major agglomerations, and we were sitting here and discussing, and I can tell you that I think the agglomerations which are currently the economic growth points, I think they will be among these agglomerations that are going to house science and education centers. Thank you. Small and medium business SMEs in cities have more prospects, more opportunities than elsewhere. And we see that the number of SMEs is growing every year in the cities. There are special programs to support SMEs in the cities, and there are new types of activities that could be performed by SMEs, and they are very much in demand in the cities, like urban space transformation or promotion of development of restaurant business, hospitality business, and so on, because currently it is the services that are growing quicker than other industries. Thank you. We have Vadim Mikhailov here with us. He is first Deputy Director General of the Russian Railways company. Tell us, please, how do you see the changes, expected changes in geography of the railway infrastructure? What are you planning to do in the coming 6 years to improve the whole system? Thank you very much for your question. Good morning, distinguished participants. Today, the Russian rail transport faces really serious goals, which have been set by Vladimir Putin in his May address to the Federal Assembly. These goals are requiring strengthening the role of our company in the country, ensuring the availability, accessibility of transport infrastructure and others. And we have a long-term program for companies development till 2025, because we understand that development of infrastructure, first of all, rail infrastructure, is a serious driver for development of the whole country's economy. And implementation of this program will make Russian railways one of the key players in the transport and logistics market globally. Based on estimates of last year, the forecast of social and economic development of this project dates back to September, plus there was on August 27th last year a meeting of Mr. Putin in Kemerovo, and based on these data we modeled how much the cargo transportation will increase from 2018 to 2020. Now it's 2.4 to 3.8. The cargo carriage in the country passenger-wise, 2.1 to 3.3% will increase, and we see these statistics which will depend, of course, and the figures, actual figures will depend, of course, on which scenario we are going to play out. And our program is till 2025. The investment earmarked is 4.3 billion rubles. We are starting to use new mechanisms like private-public partnership. We become members and shareholders of project companies, and we will have investments that will not be on our balance sheet, but will help us develop the infrastructure. And we are going to have about 4 billion investments till 2025. And apart from 5 and 8 trillion rubles and we're going to have more money by 2025. And a very important document was mentioned here. The governmental order of September 30 for an all-round development of transport and spatial infrastructure with investment of 2.4 trillion rubles, out of which 1.7 trillion is our own money, money of Russian Railways Company, RZD. But this project would enable us to increase the cargo carriage fourfold by the end of the program. And by 2024, I think there will be about 180 tons of cargoes delivered for further transportation. And like it was mentioned at the Commission on Fuel, coal will be a major part of cargoes carried. Plus, of course, we need to modernize the infrastructure, infrastructure leading to the northwest ports in our country. And development of the infrastructure will very much connect the regions and will also participate in implementing the goal to increase the well-being of the population. At the same time, the activities of Russian railways by 2024 will be responsible for 10% of the GDP. So, like I said, such projects we are talking about will definitely help regions liaise better. It will connect regions, and we are talking about cargo delivery, and you know that jointly with our leading institutes, we are preparing a very serious document. In Soviet times, it was called inter-industry balance sheet. We very much hope that the Ministry of Social Development will come back to this old practice. So we are currently looking at the transport balance just to understand which way the cargoes go, from where they come, if we have any barrier places and whatever, we can deliver the cargoes wherever you need and however much you need. So we need to debottleneck here, especially in the Asia and Pacific region. We need this. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I have a question. One of the most disputable topics is construction of the oil and gas lines. You see, Hamburg, Berlin, for instance, they have 8,000 employed all the time, even though there is a big distance between the cities, but it's not an agglomeration, but a metropolis is being shaped, which is much larger than agglomeration. As a result, the urbanized territories are now merging. Yes, I very much hope that these projects of high-speed communication, because we know that the countries that do have high-speed communication, high-speed transport infrastructure, they enjoy better development, economic development. In these countries, availability, accessibility of everything is much higher. And of course, we also want to implement this kind of approach. Approximately 20% of roads worldwide are situated in China. There is a special program supported by the Chinese government that thinks that the effect of the high-speed transportation system, and we know that this sub-project is being implemented per se. And we know that currently we have a governmental discussion, and we very much hope to participate in this discussion, because we have designed a pilot section, which is Gorokhovets and Moldavia. The average speed will be 400 kilometers per hour, and time to Nizhny Novgorod will be only 2 hours. Just imagine, then people living in Nizhny Novgorod will soon be able to easily come to Moscow to their office. And this project will be part of Eurasian general project. And all we think that, for instance, along the routes, there will be 1,500,000 square meters of commercial real estate. There will also be more residential estates. And of course, we need to see how we could even more collaborate with Внешэкономбанк on how to implement these projects. And like I said, these projects, they yield a huge number of effects for the further economic development as such. And we very much hope that we will be able to implement our major projects. And then we'll start thinking about the rest of the space. Thank you very much. by saying that people from Nizhny Novgorod could come to Moscow to their office. I see people in the audience who started thinking, we knew this is why you are doing this. We would also like people from Moscow to be able to travel to other cities. And we would like Muscovites to be motivated to go to Nizhny Novgorod, for instance, also to work there maybe. So we are talking about one of the basic goals of our economy. Igor Shuvalov, chairman of the board of Внешэкономбанк, you are now discussing a lot urban development of cities. Why is it so critical now, this topic? Because when we are talking about a plan till 2024, 2024 is not far away. Thank you. Why I think we should deal with development of the cities. This is what I did for 10 years at the government. But there, of course, the goals are high-level goals. First, they were set in presidential decrees of 2012, now 2018. The government approved the government approved the key action items of this plan. Until the end of last year, all the national project passports were approved. If we are talking about a household, if we ask a household, what is a national project, they will say, we have no idea. That's why we decided to approach implementation of this project from the other side. Where do we see the result of such projects? In the cities where people live. If in the cities there is no improvement of the quality of life, there is no way to check what has been done and how efficiently, because you can write that you have built so many houses, done this and that. In reports it looks nice, but if you ask people, has anything changed, and they say no, it will mean that the changes are only on the paper. Together with Maxim Oreshkin, together with colleagues and governors from other jurisdictions, other regions, Moscow supported us especially well, and they showed how one and the same budget could help us change the quality of life of people in particular cities. Like we have a good example in Moscow. At the same time, in partnership with Strelka, and when I was in the government, Irina Makeyeva was already deputy chairman of WEB. And in the framework of the City Development or Urban Development Fund, we try to focus on small cities, for instance. Monocities, they are large and small. And when some regions told us that they don't want to follow Moscow's example and that they will not be able to follow it, we understood something. If the mayors or governors' team is motivated, if the citizens of that city, being no less than 100,000 people, for instance, are motivated and involved, they would be able to do actually the same that we are doing here in Moscow. This is why I deal with this in Внешэкономбанк, because Внешэкономбанk is the bank of development. Together with Domorev and other programs, and in collaboration with innovative development institutes and Skolkovo, we need to remember that we want economic projects, but projects transforming people's lives, lives of households in each particular city. Of course, the government, it should deal, and it always deals with distributing budget, big goals, federal level goals, and so on. But if you don't feel any result of all these big efforts in every household, something is done improperly. So we are going to work on these projects to improve the quality of life of people. Thank you very much, Mr. Shuvalov. You mentioned MSP cooperation, and we have Alexander Breierman with us today. Could you please maybe elaborate on what is being planned in SMEs in the framework of city economics? Maybe you have any new mechanisms, some new mechanisms. Thank you for inviting. Thank you. Yes, and please turn on the microphone. Okay, now it works. Good. You know, the transformations our distinguished colleagues were talking about, they are taking place on the site in a city where people live, and to develop an agglomeration. And we remember that agglomeration is always developing quicker than just one city. The city is always doing better and quicker than a region, and a regional development goes faster than country development. So there is a special program, a unique one, which is about qualified medium business via Business Navigator of e-resource, which has already been used by more than 1,500 SMEs and entrepreneurs, talking about the science and technologies which would help us to attract more qualified personnel to the region, to the agglomeration, I mean. They need a possibility for personal development, they need opportunities to utilize their whole potential. And in the system we are building, it is the innovative sector that is the key sector. We were talking about science, like Alexei said. It is also about the high technologies which result in a breakthrough. And finally, it really affects the human lives. Thank you very much. Thank you. And today, Natalia, can I say a word? I fully agree about high technologies. And by the way, Alexei Mikhailovich was talking about high schools and the research institutes, and that's true. A large city is faster developing, having strong universities, because I wouldn't imagine Moscow enjoying speedy development if Moscow didn't have the universities and high schools it has. Apart from the fact that medium businesses in high technologies, like in Germany, for instance, these businesses enjoy a very special position. But here, we don't have even simple services where we can eat, get washed, change, or whatever. So we shouldn't forget this segment, how we can make our streets comfortable for people. We never spoke about this. No one has this on the agenda. And apart from the small and medium-sized business, apart from the fact that we need to be able to get developed and the urban environment, competing with urban environments in other countries, and here we need to transform this life, and the life can be transformed only by SMEs. Good roads, good, but not enough. We want an industry, a whole industry around the good roads, good other things, and then we'll be able to have a comfortable environment. You can build a high-speed train route, and if it's if inconvenient to live in that city, if you don't really feel good about living in that city, it will not help. And again, no one thinks that probably you just have to take the tools and clean around in your house, in your city, to make it better. Okay, you are right. If we don't feel the changes, then we have to change the institutes. You said that per 1 kilometer of space, you need more things, more entities. And again, distribution of municipal property should not go via Federal Anti-Monopoly Service. Of course, the mayors, they are supposed to do that, but we have to do something about this. Yes and no. The mayor of Moscow is being very much scolded for the fact that he pulled down a lot of SMEs selling food or whatever near the metro stations. And there are other aspects we should understand. Who does not want to go this way, he can only we can only say that it is the municipal authorities or subject or constituent authorities, as well as the federal level assessment should be importantly taken into consideration. And in small cities, in mono cities where life was stagnating, there was nothing new, nothing happened there. And over the past few years, we see that new schools, new routes and tracks are opened for the young and other important things they subscribe to. Of course, we want to change something, but we are going to have a really hard work, hard life and hard year. I mean, 2024. Okay, and now I would like to introduce to you a person who started the movement in Moscow, which we just mentioned today. Sergey, how do you think we can extrapolate a successful experience? Igor Shuvalov already said half of what I was going to say. And you are also right about the regulation and so on. And if other consultants helped you to create a space where there's only wind and nothing else, then the next step would be to approve a cities program for the cities program. We are talking about what kind of cities again? Cities with 1 million, there will be about 15 of them in a number of years. If we are talking about 22 cities from 500,000 to 1 million population, at the same time, the situation does not happen to be so interesting, so much pleasure to those who live there. And you can ask a city's mayor, for instance, do you know what is a national project? I think that any city should become a platform to collect 12 programs And when every governor has these programs, they will open local municipal agencies. We will see new educational establishments. And again, it's not that difficult. Look at the corporation, which does a real lot in terms of training their city mayors and other things. We have cities in which there are major corporations like steel makers, oil producers, and so on. If we look at the bureaucrats, example, and again, I would like to avoid discussing creative people, because currently I think these creative people, these are still young urban professionals, yuppies. In Nizhny Novgorod, those who work on the railways, they can be whatever creative they are, but these are people paying taxes, going to work every day. And if they have a question, should we stay here in Nizhny Novgorod, or we should and again, how do we want to go? And we see that in any case, with the new roads, people will be coming from Nizhny Novgorod to Moscow, but not from Moscow to Nizhny Novgorod mainly. For instance, we really need to restore the historical memories. We need to understand what is this city about, what is it meant for. If there is a beautiful town, like Plos, for instance, 300,000 tourists every year come there on tourist buses. For instance, there is a city where they have 30 million rubles for cleaning the city. Well, for 30,000 it would be okay, but 300,000 people, it's a lot. Same Diveevo. We have a direct train to Diveevo. Diveevo is a mecca of Orthodox people coming there to the monastery. And monastery is the center of capitalization of the town. It sells souvenirs, it sells tours and trips. And the population in this town, they are against this large number of tourists going there. And like we counted the territories around the houses in Moscow, we need to do the calculations and understand what has to be done in other cities to make them comfortable to live in. It should be comfortable both for the population and also comfortable for those who come there to look around or whatever. And we have to answer the challenges faced by all the straits of population, school children, adults, and whoever. Thank you. At the end, we are going to have a small online poll. You have these remote voting devices, and one of the first questions is, do we really need a single program of development of cities and dwellings? But we have still two participants of our discussion, representatives of SMEs, not large corporations. And yesterday, by the way, we had a discussion on mono cities, and we agreed. Maybe you will comment it for a few minutes. We agreed yesterday that in the framework of the new program of exchanges between the cities, this program will have a position already. and it was approved and agreed. So please say something. Thank you. Thank you, dear friends. Yesterday, we had more than 100 mayors from mono cities. There was not enough space in the conference rooms to house everyone who wanted to listen to our discussion. So we decided that in each city we will have a street called Nikolskaya Street. In every city or town, together with Google, we will go around with Google, and they confirmed their approval. And in our program, we are going to have a special block of goals dedicated to our collaboration with the enterprises in these mono-cities. Yesterday, Vadim and myself, we were moderators of this discussion panel, and I think it was a successful one because we agreed that by the end of 2020, we will come to the Ministry of Economy with a new updated program for development of mono-cities. Sergei was talking about a comfortable town. Sergei and Strelka see comfort in one way, people see comfort in a different way. The businesses should be developed to create a comfortable city. Unfortunately, it's not. It is modern enterprises and other things together with the services. I mean, everything that makes a city attractive to live in. For instance, we enrolled a few years ago the guy who was in charge of relocation of football fans and construction of stadiums and so on. And it was a success for us. And I would like to ask him about the following. And again, with your active participation, I remember how it all started in the Gorky Park, Sokolniki Park in Moscow, cinema theaters. If you wish to participate, we will gladly collaborate with you. Thank you. We have two representatives of business. Andrei Bezrukov, Director for Strategic Development of GS Group for Electronics, and Maya Lamidze, the Executive President of Tour Operators. We see that there will be new development in special areas of focus. Where do you think we will see fastest development? What do you think the mayors should do, the federal authorities and the regional authorities should do to implement the goals we have set? That's a difficult question. And what should the mayors do and the regional authorities do? You know, the mayors and regional authorities have visited over the past 3 years about 40 regions. It was a test drive to check what are the tourist expectations in 30 regions. We visited a large number of cities. Everyone said, we want foreign guests. That was their dream. And when the national project on non-resource-based export was approved, I really thought how we could get somehow linked to that national project to export our services. We realized that our town was not ready to host foreign guests for a number of reasons. And to substantiate our position and our attitude to this challenge, we made a poll. We asked, what should the city do for the tourists be willing to come back, to come go back home and be willing to come back to our town. And everyone answered, local population should enjoy living a comfortable and interesting life in this town. So it's like Igor Shuvalov said, each household should feel happy living in this city. And then the city would become a tourist attraction. Let me give you a couple of examples of cities which have taken this approach. Different cities like Volsk in Saratov region, or Chaplygin in Lipetsk region, Tomsk. A completely different story, different transport availability, and so on. But the city did a huge a breakthrough, and the city became an attraction for tourists. And there are paradoxical towns that are brilliant in terms of spatial transformation, development of transport infrastructure. It's Belgorod and Saransk. But it's not yet, these cities are not yet attractive for tourists. Life is comfortable, life is good there, but nothing too much to come there to look at or to enjoy. Kislovodsk and Petigorsk, my two last examples for you. This is in the Caucasus, agglomeration of 4 resorts. Till not long ago, these cities had different patterns of development. Kislovodsk had a master plan and concept of spatial development, while Petigorsk had just ideas, but everything was chaotic. And we still very much hope that now that they collaborate with each other, it will make both cities more attractive for tourists. So once again, you need to make cities the way that not just the tourists but local population feel happy and comfortable living in these towns, and there should be something to attract people. Gusev in Kaliningrad region, 30,000 people of population. High-tech production requires serious professional competencies which we should normally look for at large education centers. But now, with the latest communications developments in our country, we can look for talents and good experts, not just in large cities, because we understand that high technologies enjoy territories which are comfortable for life, which does not necessarily mean that these territories should be only big cities. That's why we just relocated some 200 people. We built a cottage village for these people, European-level cottage little town, and they have a very high birth rate there, higher than in general in Russia, which means that these people, they are career-focused maybe, but when they found themselves in the smaller town, they can live a more balanced life, not just being focused on doing business, on earning money, but also enjoying family life, having kids. And I think in the territory of regions, there would be a good idea to organize some points of regional growth and development, and also social infrastructure is of utmost importance. We, as a social investor, we can very quickly build both enterprises, office buildings, housing. We did that in 1 year. For instance, the region helped us with infrastructural accessibility, plus high-quality health services, education, and school. This this is what we would need to have a perfect picture of a place people like to live and work at. And if we could very quickly, also within some 12 months, roll out everything to complete this infrastructure, it could be a real breakthrough. Thank you. Based on our polls, not everyone wants to live in large cities. You are right. If we remember, Florida, which is your town, every town should cater to its type and age group of population and should offer the type of life which would be acceptable. And I do agree. We see how many people moved during the New Year holidays. We see how many people move from one city to another one. We have a myth that the Americans, Europeans, they can move from one city to another city without any problem and many times during lifetime, while in our country we are born and die in the same city, which is not true anymore. Some 3 or 4 times during our life, many of us really move around the country, move looking for a good job and a place where we can create our own business, and MSP will help them, and the mayor will help them. Now, I wasn't talking about a single standard of quality. I have never talked about it, and I do not believe in it. I believe that cities should just strive for the best and compete with each other. But you cannot impose a standard and tell everyone you should do this and nothing more. No, that's wrong. You should have an understanding that you should not do something worse than a certain level of quality, but there should be no one standard. That's nonsense. I think that thanks to our federal projects, we are going to have some minimum requirements, some minimum standards, but high standards is this, what makes the cities like Moscow and Tomsk that are ready to compete with global most successful cities. Sorry, we will have to finish our discussion because there is online voting yet in store for us. We have questions. We have to do the online voting, please. You have a question to whom? Okay, ask your question, and I, as a moderator, I will tell you if we are going to answer it. I want to help you. I don't need your help, really. Look, a conceptual question in the framework of our discussion. What are we building in Russia? Metropolis and gigapolises, and this is realistic because president wants it, and this could generate a breakthrough. Or, as the government suggests, we build agglomerations, but then budget money, if we spend them, it will mean 10 or 20 years of work. That's why in 2001, Russia signed a strategy for sustainable development and improvement of quality of life of the population of the country by 2021, but nothing has been done yet. No changes. People should not live in these apartment buildings, in these cells, but they should live in the cities. So my question is to Igor Shuvalov. Don't you think there is a deviation from the common European or global practice? It's not China, of course, but don't you think that we should build metropolises connected, like Nizhny Novgorod and Belgorod, connected to each other, and then we'll have a breakthrough. And if we scatter a national project, and if it lasts 10 to 20 years, we don't have that much time in our country. Thank you. It's like in a joke. Yes, your question is a good one. Igor, if you think You can take 30 seconds. I'm not going to fantasize. I think we do have governmental decisions, passports, budget is allocated, so it's not appropriate to think whether it's right or wrong or whatever. We have to do what has been decided, right? So we're not going to fantasize whether we should go right, left, or whatever. If there is a corporate goal set, usually what happens, everyone starts to break it down into thousands of little goals and whatever, and this is what makes it vague, and there is nothing being done. Now it's no good idea to think whether it's right or wrong what we decided to do. Yes, metropolis is good, it would attract investment and so on, but considering the cost of all the projects, we cannot afford right now to fund the infrastructure to make metropolis. The decision has been made, so we have to implement it. We have to join our efforts, join our resources so that we implement these goals till 2024. And what is more important, we should do that in collaboration instead of arguing with each other. Because I remember in old times how it was when no one was implementing anything, but just going to the government from time to time to explain why they were unable to do this or that. We should join our efforts and do what has been decided and put on paper. Okay, please show us the questions for voting. We have 3 questions. Is it necessary to develop and implement a state program for urban development and rural areas development? Yes, such a state program is necessary. Yes, but, and 3, there should be separate programs for development. Is this a state program or is this a certain action plan? We are already talking about the next question. So we need separate programs focused on development on different types of populated areas, 53.7%. Interesting. Okay, let's see. We're going to see these results later. In an innovative economy, urban metropolises are their sources of economic growth. You should choose one answer. Completely agree, partially agree, yes and no, partially disagree, completely disagree. Why is it so long? It's not difficult to choose between these 5 answers. Good. Dear friends, we see the results. Nearly 40% voted for partially agree, rather agree. And, okay, we need to let our speakers go, so let's finalize the voting. National projects enable us to achieve national goals. True or not? 100% agree, rather agree, yes and no, rather disagree, and completely disagree. Thank you. The most beautiful answer is yes and no, which means that probably even the most brilliant national projects need something else to achieve national goals. Okay, I would like to thank our speakers and participants and see you next time. Thank you.